Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics, the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everybody in between.
We are indeed. We got some new equipment this week, didn't we? Because we're going somewhere next weekend.
We are going somewhere. We're going out on a field trip. Now, we've tried to do this field trip many times before, or at least 3 times before. Something always scuppers it, so I'm not going to say where we're going.
Yeah.
But we've got a little team together. Some of the team from the Swan are coming with us. Hopefully, if all goes according to plan, James from the Lawmen will be with us with some of his dusty tomes filling the boot of our car. And so, thank you, patrons. We've bought ourselves some communications equipment.
We've got some walkie-talkies. I'm looking at them. They're bright yellow. They're really cool.
We've now, we're growing up as a podcast. We've got some official, I'm going to call it communication equipment. That sounds better than walkie-talkies. It's a TQM communication pod.
I thought because it was the Patreons who paid for these lovely walkie-talkies, I thought we could name them Patreon 1, Patreon 2, Patreon 3, Patreon 4, something like that.
Something like that. In honour. We'll do that on the night. But they're sitting next to us charging. Here we are in the studio. We're a week away. I've been putting a map together, collecting some stories, and we're just working out how we're all going to fit in, well, not how we're going to fit in 2 cars, but how we're going to go down in convoy and make an audio show. But it'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, and you understand why we're not telling you where we're going, just so we don't scupper it. But it will be fun, we think.
It will be. And as always, patrons, patreon.com/TQM pod, you will get it all first.
Brilliant. That's cool. Well, Ben, should we just get cracking straight into the episode?
Yeah, unusually, because we always have a bit of a preamble, have a coffee and stuff before we start, I didn't ask you what you were doing because I thought, actually, it's such a lovely day and I'm feeling chipper. I thought I'd like to react on the fly.
Good, that's what we like. Well, let's see if I can bring your mood down.
Oh.
Well, last week, Ben, you took us to the skies with the Sonora Aero Club.
I did.
And this week, I thought we could take a trip below the waves.
Oh, yeah, you did tease that last week. I'm sorry, I forgot that. Yes.
So what I've done is I've got some stories of what I'm calling supernatural submarines.
Ah, like USOs or different?
No, different.
Oh.
It will become clear. I mean, we've done stuff on the seas before. I'm a bit obsessed by our oceans, maybe because it's something I don't experience and it's such a vast expanse. But there is something about submarines, maybe because the idea of going in one just terrifies me, that I've picked it this week. We went to, last year we went to Legoland, and they've got like a little small kiddies submarine thing where it's like in an aquarium and you go down. I couldn't even go in that, you know what I mean? Cramp spaces under the ocean, no, even though it wasn't.
I fully with you. There's something that was used during the American Civil War called the turtle.
Right.
And if you see a side cutaway, it's a one-man device, and it's almost the equivalent of underwater cycle, basically. And you sort of sit on a seat and you twirl a thing and you peek out, and it's just got like a couple of inches above the waves. Like, it just looks like a terrifying way to die.
Yeah, no, exactly, an horrible way. I agree with you. Well, before I get into the stories, you know me, Ben, I like to do some random facts. Kind of making this a feature, really. They're random facts because I just haven't been asked to put them in any kind of order, but I'm thinking I'm going with it as a positive rather than a negative. So they're really random, and I've got a couple. It is believed, Ben, that the first ever usable submarine was designed and built by Cornelius Drebbel in the year... This is going to blow your mind, Ben. Have you got? Well, maybe you can have a little guess when the first usable submarine was created.
What year did people stop being called Cornelius? I don't know. To me, that sounds like a 16th century thing.
Slightly later, but the year is 1620.
1620. Okay.
So this submarine used oars to steer and propel itself, and later versions of the design were tested in, or I guess under, the River Thames.
Oh.
My second random fact, I love this one. A Japanese submarine shelled California in World War II. The Japanese commander had an interesting reason for choosing his target. He ordered the guns to fire on the exact spot where he had had an embarrassing fall before the war.
Oh, come on. Really?
Yes, apparently he was so, het up about the fact that he'd fallen over, I guess it was on a beach in California, that he got his submarine to fire on the exact spot that he'd had his fall.
I had no idea that a submarine had got to California in the Second World War. Wow.
No. Third random fact. The British Royal Navy's nuclear-armed submarines use an outdated computer operating system. It's a version of Windows XP.
Oh, do you know, I did know that, and I used to run Windows XP. I wouldn't trust that with a bath.
Well, at least it's not running anything like our nuclear-armed submarines.
No,
my God.
Surely it doesn't control the nukes. It just must control the sub.
Yeah, I hope so. I've just got this vision of a little paperclip coming up when you when you're about to blow up the world.
I see you're trying to start World War III. Can I help?
I love what it's called, though. It's actually got a name. It's called Windows for Submarines.
No, is it really?
Yeah, it is.
Windows for Submarines.
Yeah. I love that. And my last, and perhaps my favourite random fact, is that in October of 1981, a Soviet Whiskey-class submarine ran aground off the coast of Sweden. And do you know what the incident became known as?
Whiskey on the Rocks?
Whiskey on the Rocks.
Oh, that was a complete guess, but that's what I would have called it. Oh, nice.
I love that. That is brilliant. The Whiskey on the Rocks incident.
Excellent. I'll drink to that.
Yeah, indeed. Well, shall we get into some stories? Today's stories focus around strange encounters, seemingly cursed events featuring submarines from World War I and World War II. So let's start with the story of a German submarine which seems to have been cursed and haunted by the ghost of a dead submariner. It was the World War I German U-boat. That sounded like a U-boat, didn't it? That's those, isn't it?
Yeah. What?
So we paused because our walkie-talkies, as soon as I said German U-boat, made a kind of beep, beep noise. I don't know if you caught it on the mic, but yeah, that was weird. It's like the equivalent of having a spirit box, isn't it? So
that
yes,
was a bit weird.
It was weird. But there's this German World War I U-boat, UB-65. Now, I didn't realise, Ben, until researching this episode, just how many submarines took part in World War I. You don't really think about them as being part of World War I,
No, I think about horses, not submarines.
Yeah. Well, Britain had about 350 subs, and Germany had roughly the same number.
Wowzers. And like what, big ones?
Yeah, they ranged in sizes. They're not huge ones that we have today. And as you can imagine, Ben, life on board these early submarines was not what you would call pleasant. Most German U-boats had only 2 toilets, though one of them was usually out of action because it would be used to store food for the first half of the journey. So you had one loo between about 60 people.
I've been to a harvester before.
Other outlets are available.
That was the trouble, there weren't.
Meat would be hung from the overhead pipes. Can you imagine? You're just wandering around, there's meat hanging everywhere. Water was obtained by distilling salt water. I imagine it probably still had a little bit of salt content to it. I don't know how good distilling was back then.
I guess if it's evaporated, it's okay. But it's going to be, I would have thought, in short supply. And you're right, probably has to still be chemically treated. But I don't know. I mean,
I don't know how
it doesn't
that works.
sound very pleasant. But I mean, maybe they still do it that way today. I don't know anything about submarines, but I don't know. That sounds terribly dangerous. Like you could be miles and miles away from port, and if your distiller breaks down, you're all screwed, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, the whole environment smelt of diesel fuel, and because of the fumes, all the food and the water also tasted like diesel.
Ah, yeah, you see, that's what I was imagining, yeah.
And if you thought the submarine smelt bad, that was nothing compared to the crew. For the duration of the voyage, which was generally 2 months, the crew did not bathe or shower. Instead, crewmen would swab themselves with alcohol in an attempt to try and keep clean and not smell as much.
Again, I've been to a Wetherspoons. Though I can understand that practically the designers were told to ditch the shower block, but it's not unpleasant. 60 sailors.
60 sailors.
One toilet and no showers.
One toilet, meat hanging everywhere. Yeah, no shower, everybody stinking.
Come and join the caravan club. No,
Yeah.
again, joking. But that is really, really... could they surface and could they go for a swim?
Well, we'll get onto that because this is something else I learned, and we'll get onto that in a second. Not only could they surface, they had to quite regularly.
Because it's diesel powered, I guess.
So let's get onto this boat. So it's a German U-boat, UB-65. This one was a small boat of the UB-3 class. I really wanted to say that like I really understood what that meant.
Oh, the UB-3, yeah.
One of my favourites.
So much better than the UB-2.
Yeah, much better than the UB-40. Boom. The commander of this sub was a Capitan Schell. The crew was 31 men. Now, I don't even know whether you call a submarine a boat or not. Let's call it a vessel. It's not really a boat, is it?
Yeah, a vessel, yeah.
Now, this vessel, UB-65, it seemed cursed from the very start. During its construction at the Vulcan shipyard in Hamburg, the U-boat claimed its first victim when a heavy girder fell, killing one ship worker and seriously injuring another. Then, during preliminary engine trials, an error in the exhaust system caused a leak of carbon monoxide into the engine room, which killed another 3 men.
That does seem cursed.
It gets worse. During the sub's initial sea trials, a man was swept overboard in rough weather and lost. Disaster nearly struck during UB-65's first trial dive. Exhaust gases again escaped into the boat when the diesel engine shut down, and the whole crew was nearly asphyxiated. Now, I mentioned earlier, Ben, the bad conditions on board submarines of that time. Well, these smaller subs could be even worse. The conditions were more cramped. There's a bit of a description of these size submarines having buckets throughout the submarine because the conditions were so bad. There would be a lot of sickness and seasickness. So to add to the smell and the horrible conditions, you'd be walking around and there'd be buckets of sick festering basically throughout.
Oh, God.
The toilet situation on board was hideous, as we talked about. And to avoid going to the loo as much, maybe it had other benefits as well, many crewmen took morphine to try and reduce the number of visits they needed to pay to the one working toilet.
Oh, does that work, does it?
Apparently so, yeah. I think I guess it
Clogs
makes you
you
less
up.
regular.
Okay.
So after the initial sea trials, UB-65 was fitted out for active service. This included loading ammunition for the gun and 10 50-centimetre torpedoes. More disaster struck, man. Captain Schell's second-in-command, Officer Heinz Vio, was supervising the loading of ammunition when one of the warheads exploded.
Oh, God.
The blast killed him and 4 other crewmen and injured many others. It is believed an inexperienced sailor shipped the detonator, which prematurely went off, setting off the 1-ton weapon. All the safety devices that were meant to prevent such an occurrence had failed. So it shouldn't have happened, but as they're loading a torpedo, bang, the thing goes off, killing the second-in-command and 4 other crew members.
Awful.
Now, it was a couple of days after this event that the first supernatural apparition occurred. A seaman who was overseeing the repairs rushed to find the captain. He was shaking with fear and shouting wildly that he'd seen the spectre of the second-in-command, Heinz Vio. The seaman was screaming, "Herr Capitan, up there, I've seen him, I've seen him." Humouring the man, who he thought had gone mad, the captain agreed to come on deck to see for himself. Now, the captain didn't see the ghost, Ben, of this deceased officer. However, he did find another member of the crew called Peterson. Now, the captain regarded Peterson as steady, reliable, but he found this second sailor cowering and shivering behind a tower. Peterson had also seen the ghostly apparition of the dead man. After Peterson had calmed down, the captain asked him what he'd seen. Peterson replied that the dead officer had just walked up the brow and stood on the bows with his arms folded. He was gone now. He had vanished after a while, but he had been there, Captain.
So it's like he'd come back, because if I'm getting the story right, he was the one responsible for the explosion.
I don't think he was responsible for the explosion, but he was in charge at the time of loading the ammunition and the torpedoes on the ship when the one went off. And
so it's under his watch. Yeah, okay. Maybe trying to, as so many of the ghost stories that we hear, he's trying to go back to the scene where something happened and maybe communicate a sorrow, or of trying to understand why he's not there anymore and hope that people don't blame. I don't know. I'm making things up.
Well, I think the other thing, I think that's a really good point. As we go on with the story, I also wondered whether in some ways the ghost was coming back to warn them that, this submarine was cursed and more disaster was to come. Well, the shipmate Peterson, the one who was cowering, who the captain regarded, as one of the most level-headed in the crew, was so affected by this incident, when he got his first opportunity after the event, he deserted. And that's a crime punishable at the time by either a long prison sentence or even death.
Yeah.
So something had certainly spooked him that he was like, I'm getting off this sub.
Right.
So after all these events, the crew's morale was pretty low. So on the 10th of October, 1917, the captain felt a sense of relief when the submarine embarked on its first war mission. Now, it set out on tour around the Shetland Islands of Scotland, looking for enemy targets, but drew a blank. Their second mission, though, through the Dover Straits to Bristol, resulted in the U-boat's first action. It sunk a British and a Norwegian ship, but the crew was still uneasy about all the events that had preceded them going to sea. Then again, on the 21st of January, a paranormal apparition was again spotted. UB-65 was on the surface, 15 miles south of Portland Bill in heavy weather, when the starboard lookout noticed a figure on the deck. The lookout called out to the figure, thinking it was one of his shipmates, warning him that he might get swept overboard and into the sea. When the figure came closer and turned to face the lookout realised it was one of his shipmates, just not one that was still alive.
Oh, God.
He was face to face with the ghost of the second in command, Ines VO. Again, second sighting of the same ghost.
In the water, though?
No, just on board the top of the deck.
Oh, I see. Apologies. Yeah, I got you.
Just walking around, and then came closer. He just thought it was just somebody on the boat, shouted out, said, hey, be careful, you don't want to get swept overboard. The thing turns round, it was the dead officer's ghost.
I see.
So the lookout jumped back in terror. Captain was summoned on deck to see the apparition. However, a large wave swept over the deck and the apparition disappeared. Now, Ben, one thing I didn't know about these early submarines, we alluded to it earlier, was that they had to regularly go to the surface in order to recharge their batteries. I don't know how that works technically.
I guess they run a diesel generator which needs air, and then that recharges the batteries, and then you can turn the diesel engine off, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. But it was a thing. And after this latest ghostly encounter, none of the crew wanted to go on deck above the surface. Which, if you think about it, Ben, given the conditions that they're living in, you would want to seize any chance,
absolutely,
wouldn't you? To
yeah.
Get some fresh air, whatever, just get out of that environment. But no, nobody wanted to go up on deck. Yeah, indeed. So whether mass hysteria took hold or something truly paranormal was happening, More incidents struck the submarine. One torpedo man leapt overboard, screaming that the dead officer's ghost was haunting him. He was never seen again. So this is the third reported apparition. He literally this dead officer's haunting me, and jumped off and was swept out to sea.
And interesting that he's a torpedo man, so it's like...
Yes, yeah. That's interesting. I didn't make that connection. A gunner was washed overboard and drowned soon after that incident. After the submarine was rocked by a depth charge, another crewman hit his head on the bulkhead and was fatally injured. In February, another was killed by shrapnel from a stray bomb while returning to the boat. So I think in this one, the boat was in port and it was just somebody going back to it. There's a bomb fell near him and he got hit by shrapnel. And I guess some of these you could interpret it as just natural casualties of war, right? You would expect some of these. However, the majority of the crew firmly believed that the submarine was cursed and haunted. Now, the reputation of the sub spread. Many believe that, this is interesting, it was fueled by the British Secret Service, some of the rumours.
That would make, because I was going to say, it's as damaging for to have a reputation as it is to actually be haunted. So, yeah, you would start putting that around. Very clever if that was British Secret Service.
Yeah, because there's no harm in spreading some supernatural fear, is there, among your
totally
enemies?
No.
And we've seen it in other wars, how it's been used.
Exactly. I was going to say, like things like the Angels of Mons, which we'll cover another time, but that appears to be most likely propaganda put around to basically say to the enemy, the forces are on our side. So those sort of rumours have been used before. Yeah,
definitely. And actually one of the other stories we'll get onto has got overtones of that as well. Well, whether they believed in the curse of the submarine or not, the German authorities decided they needed to take action. The commander of the Flanders submarines, after interviewing the crew of UB-65, decided to take the sub out of commission for over a month. He replaced most of the crew. However, Shell, the captain, remained in his post. This bit's amazing. Before the submarine set sail again, an exorcism was conducted by a Lutheran pastor.
I guess the higher-up command believed... Well, I guess they could have done it for the sake of the reputation and the men.
Yeah, they either believed in the story or went, let's look, it might just calm the men if we do it, because they've got this vision that it's cursed. So the U-boat sailed out for its last mission on the 2nd of July 1918. Now, they're quite confusing and long reports of what happened to the submarine on this last fatal mission. So I've tried to distill it into my understanding of it, because some of the accounts do kind of vary and it's very long. But from my reading, a US submarine became alerted to the presence of 2 German subs, one of them being UB-65. While the American sub was in pursuit, there was an explosion which sent a plume of water flying to the surface. One of the German submarines made a hasty escape. The other one was moving slowly and seemed to be sinking towards the bottom of the ocean. It was sending distress signals to the other German boat. Can you guess which one the sinking boat was?
Yes,
UB-65.
Yes.
What caused the explosion was likely one of UB-65's own torpedoes misfiring.
So again, it makes sense that the ghost was hassling the torpedo man.
Exactly, yeah. This torpedo either exploded inside the sub before it was launched, or I don't know which is worse, or it was fired, turned around and hit the very submarine it had been fired from. And as you said, it was an exploding torpedo being loaded onto UB-65 that killed the second in command, who came back to haunt them ever since, including one of the torpedo men.
Oh, and of course all hands were lost, so we don't know at all what happened. Right, okay.
Yeah, no, it sunk to the bottom of the ocean. But just what a catastrophic chain of events, right?
Post the war and everything, is there any information that's come to light that you've spotted, which sort of suggests that maybe it was was it British Secret Service trying to sort of instill this idea that German torpedoes were dodgy and then it just came to fruition? Or is it that's just a theory that's floated and nobody really knows? Yeah,
I don't know. I think the thing I took from it is I think these events happened the way they happened. I think the Allied forces went, right, this is a great way, we'll just ham up this story and kind of keep the curse going. The one thing I did think when I was researching this is, men being swept aboard, hit by shrapnel, all that kind of stuff. Well, that must have been going on all the time, right?
Yes.
And like you said, I mean, we're talking about the early 1900s here. How the technology, were torpedoes foolproof? I very much doubt it.
No.
In the rush to war, I know the Germans, especially at that time, were trying to build as many submarines as possible. So, mistakes get made. So how much of it is just stuff that was happening all the time, but this one sub just seemed to have worse luck than anybody else's? And, of course, then when you have a couple of crewmen saying they've seen a ghost, the whole thing just takes off. That's possible, yeah. That's an example of a ghost and a cursed submarine. Would you like to hear another tale of another German World War I sub? This one encountered a giant sea water cryptid.
That's the very one I want.
I thought you'd be interested in that. I could see your ears prick up. Well, I would be able to see your ears prick up if they didn't have headphones over them.
Well, that it just makes me think of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
This is very 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, sweet.
Well, on April 30th, 1918, towards the end of World War I, a British patrol ship sailing off the coast of Ireland spotted a German U-boat. Now, this U-boat was moving at a slow speed on the surface, which was unusual, and the boat gave chase, finally coming across the disabled German submarine floating on the surface. So it caught up with it, basically. So the crew were surprised and a little were taken back because it's rare to find a German sub in this stricken position in broad daylight. And there was this thing of why didn't it just dive, you know what I mean, and get out of the way?
Yeah.
Well, the crew of the German vessel, UB-85, abandoned their submersible and were rescued by British patrol ships. The commander of the German sub, Captain Gunther Kresch, was immediately taken for interrogation. When he was asked what had happened to the submarine, the captain gave a reply that left his interrogators open-mouthed. According to Captain Kresch, during the night, the U-boat had surfaced in order to recharge the sub's batteries. Theme here, isn't there? The captain and some of his officers and a few members of the crew had gone onto the deck to enjoy the fresh air and have a smoke. Suddenly, the submarine violently rocked and the starboard bow began to be dragged down. Then, out of the darkness, what the captain referred to as a strange beast climbed out of the ocean and onto the side of the U-boat. Every man on watch began firing a sidearm at the beast, but the animal had hold of the forward gun and refused to let go. Captain Kresch continued, stating the proportions of the beast were so immense that it rocked the U-boat and caused it to list greatly to the starboard side. Though his men were terrified, the captain feared the beast would drag the boat down and the open hatch would fall below the waterline, flooding the boat. So the captain ordered his men to keep firing at all costs at the giant cryptid. When Captain Kresch was asked by the British officers what the beast looked like, he said, and I quote, "The beast had large eyes set in a horny sort of skull. It had a small head, but with teeth that could be seen in the moonlight."
It's a proper sea serpent.
Really is, isn't it? So the crew kept firing at this beast until it finally let go of the forward gun and then disappeared under the water back into the depths where it came from. Captain Kresch explained to the British officers that during the struggle, the forward deck plate of UB-85 had sustained so much damage that it left the U-boat incapable of submerging. All the crew on the surface corroborated Captain Kresh's account, and when all the submarine crew were safely on board the British vessel, the British Navy sunk the German submarine. So the secret of UB-85 are lost to the bottom of the ocean, and no other sightings of this strange sea monster were reported during that period of the war.
Oh, damn. I'm sort of metaphorically bashing my head against the wall now, because it's like we want the evidence that this happened, because this could just be a story of, you know, my boat actually had a technical problem, but I don't want to admit that.
So the crew's retelling of the encounter, along with the captain's, was chronicled by members of the British Navy only hours after the U-boat was found. So the UB-85 was cleared of all remaining crew and sunk. So there remains no explanation that would explain the events which resulted in the sinking of this submarine, though there have been speculation over the years, including Gary Campbell, who's the official sightings record for the Loch Ness Monster. He got in on the act on this one.
Okay.
He says, the area of the sea where the attack took place has a history of sea monster sightings. They have ranged from the north coast of Wales to Liverpool Bay. He said what the captain said could be true. It's great to see how Nessie's saltwater cousins clearly got involved in helping the war effort, even managing to do damage without having anyone killed.
That sounds like the sort of press release that Muller Rice would put out.
Yeah, exactly. Brought to you by Muller. That's brilliant.
I just don't. I mean, he's not adding anything to this.
He really isn't.
He's basically just going, yeah. There's definitely monsters.
I love the connection that he's managed to wangle it. Oh, Nessie's seawater cousin.
I know. I just think that the boat ran into difficulty. So, do the crew's accounts match the captain's accounts? Do we know?
Well, let's get on to that, actually. Because this whole thing remained a mystery until nearly 100 years after the strange events, when a new investigation was sparked from an unlikely source, Ben.
Is it Muller Rice?
No, it's energy firm Scottish Power.
Oh, I forgot, that's even better. Oh, because they are, trying to put some hydro system into the sea for generation, right?
Well, something like that. In 2016, Scottish Power announced that engineers laying undersea cables had discovered the wreck of a U-boat lying on the seabed close to the last coordinates of UB-85. Now, this did not result in any new evidence, Ben. However, it did spark investigators to try and find out more information about the strange case. And this was for a documentary series called World War Weird, which I never saw that documentary series, but a good title for a documentary.
I love it. I wish I'd seen it.
Yeah. So the captain of the U-boat never expanded or retold his story, and unfortunately he died about a year after the event happened. However, researchers delved deep into the vaults of the United States National Archives and Record Administration and came across microfilm that suggests another theory as to what occurred that disastrous night. It is possible, if not likely, that the submarine was not damaged by a mythical creature, but by creature comforts. According to one recent unearthed account from Senior Stocker Julius Gottschamer, I think I've said that right. When it's got the two O's over the top, is that a goat or a got?
A goot, I think.
So, according to accounts from Senior Stoker Julius Gottschamer, I still haven't said that right, the German crew member, in an interview he gave to British interrogators at the time of the incident, laid the blame directly at the door of the captain. This is just bonkers. Early in the submarine's voyage, the captain, after complaints from his senior officers about the cold, insisted on installing a heater in the officers' compartment. Gottschamer said that the cables needed to power the heater had to run through the conning tower, compromising its ability to be completely sealed.
Now we're getting to the nub of it.
Gottschamer claimed when the U-boat surfaced, they were spotted by the enemy vessel. The captain panicked, ordered the sub to dive below the surface, but the hatch wasn't closed properly and water started to leak in. Now, normally, Ben, this wouldn't be a problem. Just that part of the U-boat would flood because there's, you must have seen it in the films. There's the top bit and then there's the bottom bit.
You can seal off the
yeah, so that compartment would have flooded, but the sub should have been able to dive. However, because of the cables running through that area, the secondary hatch would not close, which meant the whole submarine began to flood when it went under the water, resulting in UB-85 having to resurface and the water damage disabling the whole vessel, including the engines. If you go for this theory, Ben, it was easier for the captain to tell this tale of a cryptid sea monster attack than to admit that he damaged his submarine, got the whole crew captured, finally had his vessel sunk by the British, all because he and his officers were a little bit cold and wanted some central heating.
That makes a lot more sense. And so how did they... was it just intelligence reports that found this out, was it?
Well, at the time, this is interesting. We may come back to this as a theme. At the time, everybody just went with this story because you had the captain and you had some senior officers on the deck saying, no, it was this incredible sea monster. This guy was below deck and he was like, well, no, we dived and then the boat started to get flooded and then we went back up again. So he was one interview. I think everybody else had kept their mouth shut, but he told the investigating officers at the time this was his theory of what happened. But it got buried in the records. And I think it comes back to that, what we alluded to earlier. In some ways, it probably suited everyone, the sea monster story, didn't it? It suited the captain, obviously, because he didn't want the embarrassment and the shame and probably the firing squad that may have come about because he just because he wanted some central heating. It probably suited the German authorities because we've talked about kind of Nazis' obsession with the supernatural anyway, but this idea that they were attacked by a beast is less embarrassing than that version of events, right?
Very much, yeah.
The British and the Allied forces were probably happy with that story because, a bit like the Nessie guy said, it made it feel like this serpent was on their side, attacking the German vessel and not Allied vessels.
Yes, that's true, although that is definitely the weakest of all of their arguments. The notion that a sea serpent is like, oh yeah, must do my bit for the war effort.
Yeah. I've just got a vision of a little kind of Union Jack tattoo on its back.
Yes, with a thistle for Scotland.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, but I wonder how... I mean, it's probably with all of the fog of everything in 100 years, everyone's forgotten about it, and it's probably just passed down as a shaggy dog story. But I really like that, and it's the perfect example of... Doesn't matter, he's a captain of a U-boat, should be trusted, I suppose. I mean, I guess we always sort of say, look at who is giving the accounts, but that is definitely a good example of... As soon as you said it, I was like, he's definitely lying.
What a creative thing to come up with, though, isn't it?
Yeah, you could see... It's the detail of... You could see his teeth in the moonlight. And you're like, yeah, that's not what you'd say.
But I also wondered, if you're being interrogated, you could go back, couldn't you, to your... Well, after the war, whenever, go back and go, I didn't tell them anything. I made up this huge story about this monster attacking us, and they seem to buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, who knows? That was just one member of the crew who didn't see what happened, theory of what happened. So, yes, it was either that the cabling that was laid so that the officers could keep warm with a little heater had meant that the whole sub was starting to sink and they had to reach the surface, or they were attacked by Nessie's seawater cousin.
Yeah.
You decide.
I think I have decided.
I thought you had. So our final story, Ben, I don't know if this is a case of a submarine that is cursed or just calamitous. You'll have to decide as we go on. So we're moving from World War I to World War II, and a submarine that began construction in 1927 and eventually was commissioned in 1939. At the time, it was the biggest submarine in the world. It was a French sub called Surcouf. I think that's how you say it, Surcouf. The vessel was 350 feet long, so that's over 100 metres.
Oh, it's big.
That's huge, isn't it? It had a crew of 120 men. This is bizarre. It also had a prison that could hold a further 40.
Because of prisoners of war?
Well, I was thinking that, but how often does that happen for you on a submarine? Do you know what I mean? I guess you might, if you've destroyed a boat, you may want to kind of collect the people who are in the water and, rescue them, and then you need a prison to put them in. So, yeah maybe. I love the next bit about this submarine. It had a watertight compartment that carried a seaplane.
What? This is James Bond now?
It really is James Bond, isn't it? So, it could be under the water, come to the surface, open up this kind of watertight compartment. I guess they have some mechanism, like getting a lifeboat off, get the seaplane on the water, off it goes.
That's absolutely phenomenal.
I love that, don't you?
I've
really
never
heard of anything like that before.
I know, I really want one. What year did you say this was?
It saw commission in 1939 and it was built in 1927. So, it was on the ocean in 1939.
But, basically invented in the 20s. That's crazy.
Yeah. Now, it goes without saying, this huge submarine was packed with firepower. It could attack shipping under the water with its torpedoes, but also above the waves, it had great firepower to sink vessels from the surface. Now, the downside of this submarine was it was pretty slow, especially slow to dive, which could make it vulnerable. I don't know why. This was the first thing I thought when I heard this next fact. You've decided, I know, we're going to build a prison. It's going to hold 40. We're going to have a secret waterproof compartment that you can put a seaplane in.
We've got the caviar fridges, got 8 of those, yeah.
It didn't have radar.
What?
Yeah. I couldn't find out any reason why it didn't have radar. I don't know.
Ran out of money.
It's a French sub. Maybe they just went, no, the plane's more important, and the prison, and like you said, the kind of the croissant oven.
I would agree.
Yeah, forget the radar. We're having a croissant oven. When France fell under German control in June 1940, the captain of the Surcouf decided the only course of action was to flee France and head for Britain. I mean, he didn't want the Nazis getting control of this powerful sub, which makes sense. So arriving in the British port of Plymouth was more entente horrible than entente cordiale, Ben.
Why?
When the British boarded the submarine, a fight broke out between the French crew and the British, which resulted in 4 deaths.
What?
Yeah, they were just fighting away.
Why? Over what?
I don't know. Whether it's a French...
Did they think that they were German?
I don't know. Well, I guess at the time there may have been a split in people who may have wanted to stay in France and not leave their families and all that stuff. And I don't know. Maybe the British were boarding it to kind of take some control, and there was some resistance to that.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah. I could imagine how that would be awkward, actually.
Yeah, but either way, a fight broke out and there were 4 deaths. So after this incident, the French crew were given the option of either returning to France, which actually most of them did, so they could be with their families, including the captain. Only 16 of the crew remained on board, and the submarine basically became under control of the Allied forces, even though, the crew was French. Which left them with a problem, I guess. Because if you think about it, they arrive at the British port, there's a fight between the French troops and the British troops that results in 4 deaths, you've now got a whole crew you need to replace on this submarine. It doesn't feel like putting British crew on board with the French crew is going to work, right? For lots of reasons. So they had to try and find French crew to make up for all the people who had left. And they did. So the majority of the crew were replaced by other French seamen who fled to Britain. And the majority of those had little or no experience aboard submarines. So they could be merchant navy, they could be from a French warship. There were very, very few who had experience on working on submarines. So you've got this submarine that has a crew of 120, only 16 of them really knew about submarines.
They're going to feel some animosity against this as well, I would think.
Yeah. Well, British Royal Navy Vice Admiral Max Horton thought it was best not to send the French sub out on active service. Good decision, I think.
Yeah.
However, the leader of the Free French, Charles de Gaulle, insisted the Surcouf remained in active service, I guess as a symbol of defiance and kind of, French power.
Yeah.
So de Gaulle convinced Winston Churchill to keep the French submarine in active service, much to the annoyance of the Vice Admiral. So the Vice Admiral was left with this decision, what do I do with this thing? He was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this submarine to the Royal Navy training base in Scotland so they can have some training. So kind of delaying, effectively, and getting the crew up to speed. And that's what they set out on the 30th of November 1940 to do that. But the political pressure mounted to get the submarine back on the waves, or under the waves. So they only had 2 weeks training.
But surely that's crazy in any situation.
You've got to think, haven't you? So the submarine and its inexperienced crew and captain were thrown into the fray. The British Vice Admiral decided to pick the safest mission he could under the circumstances, sending the submarine to act as a convoy escort in the Western Atlantic. And he did this because, I said about the slow diving time of this submarine. It made it really vulnerable to attack from aircraft. And in that area of the war in the Western Atlantic, it was very unlikely that you would come across or be attacked by enemy aircraft.
Right, I see.
So the Surcouf departed Clyde in Scotland on February the 19th, 1941, arrived in Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada 6 days behind schedule, and then it had to spend a month in the dock for repairs. So it didn't bode well on its journey. The inexperienced captain of the Surcouf, I don't know why he did this, ordered his men to remain on board the ship while repairs were made, which caused unrest among the crew and also annoyed their allied hosts of like, look, hold on, there's like plenty of space on land and we can kind of work together, but this captain insisted his crew stay on the boat in cramped conditions in port.
Yeah, that's a bad call.
Really bad call. Perhaps because of this, when the submarine did join the fleet as an escort vessel, other ships berated it as more of a threat than a protector.
Oh, God.
So it started to cause some suspicion about it. So there were rumours that the submarine was cursed, and this was enhanced when the Surcouf was attacked by a German warplane. Now remember, it had been sent there because there weren't any warplanes around, or not many. One of the crew was killed, 6 injured. Once again, the captain ordered the crew to remain on board in cramped conditions while repairs were made. Oh, this is the worst bit, Ben. I nearly shed a tear at this bit. The compartment where the plane was damaged, so it was taking water. So they had to take the plane off the sub.
Plane's ruined.
Plane's ruined.
It's the best bit of the whole thing.
It really is.
Wait, though, they didn't have a pilot on board.
I still don't care.
You just want the... Yeah.
I just want it there. Do you know what I mean? It's reminding me of... I remember seeing one of those amazing motorhomes I don't know if you've ever seen this huge thing, more like a lorry than a motorhome.
Yes.
And there's a little cabinet underneath it that includes a little 2-seater Mercedes sports car.
Yeah,
that comes out. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
It's reminded me of that. There was more political pressure brought to give the submarine a proper mission, again as a symbol of French resistance. So the Surcouf was sent to the South Atlantic. The submarine set out on a new mission on June 30th, leaving her new port of Bermuda.
Nice.
You probably guess what might be coming later.
Shorts?
You got it. The first mission was a complete disaster. 3 electrical failures ensued. Then there was a fire in the gear room. The submarine, like the sub we discussed earlier, dived without properly closing its hatch, causing the submarine to flood and chlorine gas to spread through it. The Surcouf had to limp back to port on the surface and went back to Bermuda.
I'm not going to say I've had a French car, but it feels like this was rushed through, even though it took, 13 years to build? No, 12 years to build.
Yeah.
It's got problems, hasn't it?
Yeah. And I think your car analogy is a good one, because for me, if it still had the waterplane on board, it would be an Alfa Romeo and you wouldn't care. But now they've taken it off. It's just a kind of bad French car.
Yeah, it's a Renault 19.
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame, though.
Well, a complete refit of the sub took place in the naval shipyard in New Hampshire, and the Surcouf then set out again from Bermuda with a new captain. On that journey, the French sub came across an Allied tanker ship. The Norwegian tanker was so freaked out by the bizarre behaviour of the sub, I guess the way it was moving about, that they put out a distress call saying they were under attack by a submarine flying a French flag.
No.
Yes.
How embarrassing.
The incident was eventually put down to the inexperienced French crew not knowing proper procedure. So I don't think they announced themselves. So you think about it, this is a Norwegian tanker going along. I've got this vision, I'm sure it wasn't like this. You've got this sub on the surface with these huge guns almost zigzagging across the surface with a French flag flying, coming straight at you. They're like, what the heck is going on? So they put out a distress call saying they're under attack.
They were being ambushed,
Yeah. This didn't help. This standoffish thing, the crew staying on board when repairs were done, this incident with the Norwegian ship, the rumours really ramped up that the crew were actually pro-German and couldn't be trusted, that somehow they'd almost become a spy ship within the Allied Navy.
Oh, right.
However, one British admiral described the French sub in a secret message as being of no operational value and little short of a menace.
Yeah, I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah, you can see
little short of a menace.
Little short of a menace. The Surcouf had acquired a bad reputation, labelled everything from notorious, incompetent, traitorous, and even cursed. So, Ben, as you might expect, there are a lot of theories about what happened to the submarine next. There you go. After leaving port in late February 1942, the biggest submarine in the world mysteriously disappeared in what we would now call the Bermuda Triangle.
Never to be seen again?
Never to be seen again.
Any distress calls? Any...
Come on to a bit of that. Not really. There's real hazy information about this whole thing. So there are theories of what happened to the Surcouf, and they do range from it was a victim of the paranormal power of the Bermuda Triangle. It was deliberately sunk by the Allied forces to avoid future embarrassment, was one theory. Another rumour was the sub was observed helping to refuel an enemy German U-boat and was sunk by an American submarine. Now, there's no hard evidence to back up any of those theories, but the closest we do get to an informed theory is the Surcouf accidentally collided with a US merchant freighter, the Thompson Likes, on the night of February the 18th. Now, the freighter turned on all its lights to see what had happened and search for survivors from what had hit them. Nothing could be seen, no men in the water, no wreckage, but there was a strong smell of oil in the air. Now, it was surmised that given the location, it is possible the freighter was hit by the French submarine and the Surcouf was lost to the ocean floor forever. According to Warfare History Network, no documentation or evidence has ever been discovered to confirm any of the tales, although one verifiable event detailed the bombing and sinking of a very large submarine lying low in the water by the US 3rd Bombardment Squadron operating out of Panama. Happened at 9 a.m. on February the 19th, 1942. Now, that came one day after the other ship, the Thomas Lykes, had said it'd been hit by something. That feels likely. It's a large submarine the day after a collision, so I guess you can surmise that it hit this other vessel, was damaged during daylight, it was seen on the water, bombed and sunk.
I see. But some people did try and explain it away as a paranormal disappearance, did they?
Yeah, that it was part of a kind of Bermuda Triangle, and there's this theory of it being cursed, although, seems more hapless than cursed, doesn't it?
I don't think every Renault 19 is cursed.
No.
But it would appear that way.
But the article goes on to say why she should have been bombed by American planes was left unexplained. It was an object of rumour, speculation and conjecture while she was afloat. Surcouf continues to arouse speculation today, years after its disappearance. Neither the sub nor any member of her crew have ever been seen since the winter of 1942, fueling her unwanted but unavoidable reputation as the true Flying Dutchman of World War II.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yes, that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story. I mean, horribly sad for the crew.
Really sad for the crew. Yeah. What, you mean that they lost the plane? No.
Yes, that was the main bit.
Yeah.
I wonder whether the original captain survived the war. He must have...
Oh, that's interesting. Yes.
He must have pined after his ship because perhaps he could have piloted it better.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and that decision of almost separating themselves from their allied compatriots, let's say, I think that had big consequences because it just fueled these rumours that they're traitors, you know what I mean? There's something going on here. What are they doing? There's something secretive, let alone the kind of inexperience of the crew causing mistakes. So then a mistake gets seen as a deliberate act, do you know what I mean? But there was a little bit of conspiracy theorist in me of going, I know there's no evidence of this, but this feeling of maybe the British or whoever went, or the Americans went, wouldn't life be a little bit easier if we just...
Yeah, I can see that.
And again, it comes back to what we were saying about the other story. Maybe these kind of Flying Dutchman, it was cursed, it's a ghost ship type stuff is a nice story to have out there rather than anybody digging around the truth that maybe we did sink it because it was an embarrassment.
Yeah, interesting. Well, like you say, are there any submarines with aircraft on today? No.
Yeah.
It was ahead of its time.
Which I think is a loss.
It is a loss. Perhaps we should start a campaign to bring them back.
I wonder if there's any of those private ones that might have like a helicopter compartment or something. I don't know, but it seems like the kind of thing multi-billionaires might
Elon
want.
Musk could have one, wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe we should campaign for Elon Musk to build one.
Yeah. I mean, my final thought on all of this is it was interesting while I was researching it that the majority of these quote-unquote paranormal tales of submarines do come from World War I or World War II. Of course, there are other stories out there, but the big bulk of them. And it did make me think back to that idea of the British spreading stuff and, maybe it's easier for the Germans to accept that, or have the story out there, it's supernatural rather than incompetence. So I wonder if these stories, easier to get away with a conspiracy theory in a war, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think so. And there's more people to spread them around because there's people who've got something to gain by people believing something is cursed, something's been attacked by a sea serpent, or something's been lost in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
Everybody has got something to gain from that if you follow it to the root of the story, whereas outside of war, not so much.
Yeah. You said about the kind of seaplanes. I wonder if submarines now have central heating as well to avoid that kind of...
They must do. They must do, because like some of our... Well, the British ones, they go out on... I can't remember how long ago, but months, and nobody knows where they are apart from the captain.
Yeah.
And they sit under ice caps and stuff. They must, because they're nuclear powered. I mean, there's you've got a lot of energy there to do whatever you want.
Yeah, I did actually in my research. I did come across, I think some of the British subs. I mean, I guess they'd run out of food and various other bits and pieces, but technically they could remain submerged for like up to 25 years. And that Radio 4 thing, I'm sure we've talked about it before, that the British check that the world hasn't blown up by tuning into Radio 4 once a day.
Yeah, is that true? Do you think?
Apparently, yeah. Although you would think they would be kind of in contact with the consistently.
Yeah,
how dark do you go? Do you know? Do you do that for months on end? But I guess the world could turn on a day, so maybe.
Yeah. I thought some of those number stations maybe.
Yeah.
As well, but well, great salty tales. Thank you.
One thing I've decided, it really reinforced why I'm glad I never would go down into a sub. Especially one of those. Somebody, we've got the World War I submarine experience. Do you want to come? No, I don't.
Not really.
No.
I always wanted to build one as a radio-controlled model, but...
you wouldn't know where it was going.
Well, exactly. You'd have to have a swimming pool, and I haven't got a swimming pool, so you can't do it in a river, can you, really? You wouldn't be able to see it.
No.
But, no, that's fantastic. Well, brought as much down to earth. Last week, airships. This week, sea ships. Next week, a peculiar invention and a mysterious disappearance.
Brilliant.
And then our field trip, and we'll tell people more about that on the Patreon.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you for listening. Go check out our Patreon. We post our podcasts earlier, and as Ben was saying, there's other content on there. If you get a chance, leave us a review wherever you get your pods. That always helps us as well. And we've all the way through this podcast, our walkie-talkies have been going off, so we're going to have to try and sort that out for when we get going.
It might be a call from the dead.
Yeah, there you go. Well, look, we'll be back next week with more quantum mechanicsness. Thanks for listening.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Are you the quantum mechanics?